There's more! I'm back! CGI shit!
I rest my case.
It was fucking horrible!
Okay, forgive me for the crude setup and the way this is angled, but I'm doing this relatively quick because I want to get this out for you guys. Plus, I have to film this again because the first time my camera battery died and it wasn't really that good. But to the point. Hey guys, what's up? It's BigJackFilms here. Welcome to another opening night. And, yeah, we're back on this. I've got two more I gotta work on that I shot at G-Fest, but we'll get those down to it when we get to it. I'm still waiting to get the footage. But to the point, gotta get back on these for you guys, and these are essentially two movies that a lot of people want me to talk about, one in particular, but the other one's a surprise, but we'll get to it. But to the point, let's get this going. But what we have is a double feature for you guys. I'm filming two videos in this way, because today Nikita and I went to the movies, did a double feature to catch up on the latest summer releases. And those being, the first one, obviously, is something a lot of you guys have been curious to get my opinion on because I did cover the original. That being Twisters, the 25-year sequel to 1996 Twister starring Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt, Carrie Elways, and Philip Seymour Hoffman. My thoughts on the first one? I think it's a great disaster movie. I think it's one of the best. It has a great ensemble cast. Michael Crichton wrote the script, the guy who wrote the books for Jurassic Park. In fact, this is kind of canon to Jurassic Park. According to the Mizrahi Group website, there's a nod to Twister that apparently makes that series canon, which I think is kind of interesting. But if you want to know my full thoughts on Twister, the first one, link down below to my review, and you can check out my opinions there. It's one of my favorite episodes that I worked on. It has one of my best gags that I've done. And with that, we have the 25-year sequel, which has been in the works for some time. In fact, it kind of goes back to the first one because it was such a huge hit that I remember as a kid in the 90s when the movie came out, going to a friend's and he had a VHS tape called Twister 2, which was my first inkling there was going to be a sequel, where it wasn't actually a sequel, it was a direct-to-video cash-in on Twister, but it was just another series of Twister movies that had stock footage of tornadoes, and it was not really that good from what I remember, but I remember it was kind of funny that there was already a sequel when the first one came out, even though it was a sequel to another movie called Twister. But this idea has been kicking around for a while. The biggest advocate for a sequel was Bill Paxton, who in a couple of interviews said what he wanted to do for a sequel is a legacy sequel, passing on to the next generation, and seeing where it goes from there. But obviously, I think when he passed away in 2016 during the Great Hollywood Plague, a lot of people were like, let's not do a sequel. But lo and behold, Universal, Warner Brothers, and Steven Spielberg producing have come out and said, no, you know what, let's make a sequel. Let's do one. I think it's about time. And it's an interesting idea. It's not really connected to the first one. It feels like a remake. But it is connected to the first one to some degree. There's no references to other characters and so on, but we'll get to it when we get to it. What is the story? So, Twisters follows a group of new tornado chasers, one of which is a girl named Kate, and who goes through, obviously, some issues with tornadoes, being a chaser, and she's in New York with her friend, played by the guy from Transformers Rise of the Beast, the 8-bit Mickey guy. Yep, he's back in his second summer blockbuster, set at start in New York, mind you. This is the second time he's done this, oddly enough, so when are the Autobots going to show up? Oh, right. They show up in November in Transformers 1, which, I'm going to be honest, guys, does not look good, but back to Twisters. Basically, they want to do more research on tornadoes, and they need her help. And with that comes help from a group of rogue tornado chasers, one played by Glenn Powell, who's really hot right now, and they all have to kind of figure out what to do with a new set of tornadoes and to make more and more tornadoes more easy to avoid as terms of being nature's wrath. So it is kind of like the first one, but it has some twists and turns, there are some nods to it, and there's some that you feel like should have been. Now, what do I mean by that? So, in structure, it is practically the same movie as the first one. You have a tragic backstory, you cut to years later, you have a character who's kind of not doing the same shtick anymore, who comes back into the game, and is followed by a bunch of friends. There's a competition between the rebel, rogue, independent group versus the corporate sponsor group, you know, the Jonas, son of a bitch, he's in it for the money, not the science. Like, you got that group. You've got all these different tornadoes. You've got twin tornadoes. You've got single tornadoes. You've got, you know, the F3, F4. Is there an F5? Unfortunately, we do not get the glass drop that we get in the first one, nor do we get a line like the finger of God. And it all culminates into a big, giant tornado doing fire shit, and it's an F5, because of course it is. And also there's a movie theater, because you have to. But with that being said, yes, it follows the flavors of the first one. It feels like a legacy sequel without much of a legacy. There are no callbacks, really, to the first one in terms of story and characters, but there are some elements. There is obviously, Dorothy makes an appearance at the beginning. It's definitely a different model than we've seen before. Definitely the research from the first team did pick up and advance 25 years later in helping people with storms. But then on top of that, there's callbacks and lines and scenes. Like, one of my favorite callbacks is where the 8-Bit Mickey guy looks at Kate and says, "Kate, I'm glad you're back." And she's like, "I'm not back." Nod to when Philip Seymour Hoffman and Bill Paxton's like, "Yo, glad you're back, man! I'm not back!" Like, that's a good callback. One of my favorite callbacks was actually, there is a scene in a movie theater. If you remember the first one, it was, by the way, minor spoilers in this. In the first one, it was The Shining at a drive-in theater. Actually, in this one, it's a rodeo. But there is a scene in the theater where Jack Nicholson's face, when he says, you know, "Here's Johnny," and the tornado, like, hits it. We get one like that, but it's in a classic movie theater showing classic movies. And because this is a Universal property, they are showing the original Frankenstein. And what I love is, it's a little bit edited off in order, but what I really love is, where the replacement for the "Here's Johnny" and the tornado hits is where Dr. Victor Frankenstein says, "It's alive! It's alive!" And it just, as he goes away, it's like, "It's alive!" Like, it's a really cool callback. But there's a lot of that in this movie. Not much in terms of story and characters, and this is a very minor spoiler, but it feels like there's one scene in particular in the film, can't say where, can't say what, where you feel like Helen Hunt was supposed to be in this movie. I talked to Sean about this, and he agrees with me, and I realize this. There is a moment where you feel like Helen Hunt was supposed to be in this film, but clearly she dropped out. Clearly she did not want to be involved. And it kind of feels, it feels like one of those moments, like, you know, like one of those big legacy character moments where this is the moment where the legacy character comes in to make a cameo, and everybody's like, "Woo!" But it's just some random person that we've never seen. And it kind of contradicts the story a little bit, because there is one character who you swear was the son or daughter of a character from the first one, because chronologically it makes sense. And I guess I'll go into the spoilers here. So I feel like Kate was originally supposed to be Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt's daughter. And there is a scene that you feel like Helen Hunt was supposed to be in this, and she didn't drop out. And almost like, you know, the mom comes in to comfort the next generation of storm chasers. In fact, there's moments you feel like she was about to say, your rebellious attitude in predicting the storm, you're just like your father. None of that in this. In fact, it's a single mom. This was written for Helen Hunt. And it's not there. It's really not there. And I feel like it's kind of a disappointment. You can tell this scene was written for that, but she didn't want to return. This is one of those things where it's kind of like in Dr. Sleep, where the scene where you see Jack Torrance with older Danny with Ewan McGregor, and you're hoping for Jack Nicholson, but it's Henry Thomas instead, but it's something you could easily deep fake by putting over Jack Nicholson. I would love to see somebody do a fan edit of this, but you digitally put in Helen Hunt's face over this character, because then it'll kind of make sense. But in this case, there's something there. You feel like there is supposed to be a callback, but they couldn't get it. But other than that, like, that's really it with, like, connection to the first one. But as a standalone movie, it's pretty good. Like, again, it's very much a remake of the first one, but the effects work, the sets look great, the cast is great. The storyline, in terms of technobabble, doesn't make much sense, but hey, that's Michael Crichton. And I don't know who wrote this script. I can't remember who wrote this one, but Michael Crichton is credited there. But it is very much feels like a tribute, a love letter, a standalone sequel that has a lot. The effects are still... It's still ILM doing the special effects. However, I will say this. I like how apparently they had used real tornado footage. They had actually used real storm chasers to get footage, which kudos to them for actually doing. Going as practical as possible. This felt very practical. The fact that they shot it in Oklahoma like the first one. The studios have always been pressuring them, please do not film this in Oklahoma. It is a safety hazard. We don't have insurance. This is going to cost us in the budget. But the director said, nah, fuck that. We gotta be like the first one, shoot it in Tornado Alley, which they did. Kudos to them. I mean, I've been through tornadoes. I know how risky that could be. But for authenticity, it really worked here. I will not say, though, the product placement's a little off. Because not only do you have things like Cheetos and shit in there, but also, the Dodge car company is plastered all over this film. And they had like an advertisement for it too with the Dodge Caravan or whatever. That is one of the prominent vehicles in this movie. And you could tell like that was the case here. So Dodge is prominent in here, and it's really distracting, the product placement here. It's kind of ridiculous. But it was this like, alright, it's fine. Get your product placement. I miss those days. The soundtrack's actually very good. That Oklahoma song will not come out of my head, I'm not kidding. Unfortunately, no callbacks to the soundtrack from the first one, no Ride in the Storm, no Van Halen Human Beings. Like, man, I would have liked to hear that again. But again, still, decent movie. Very well shot. I like how they use the new technology for weather stuff like drones, and, you know, obviously YouTube streaming and streaming stuff is in here. We're finally at that period where it's more acceptable, which I think is cool. I will say, Glenn Powell is really good in this, as sort of a mix of Jonas and Bill Paxton in the first one, which is kind of cool to kind of hybrid. They do stuff where it's not just the same plot. There is a moment of twist where, you know, characters work together or switch sides and stuff, and there's some other little bits in there that are interesting about the corporate sponsorship stuff that was prominent in the first one. All that's still there, which is really cool. And there's a lot more dread in this one. I feel like the body count's a lot higher. You see people get killed by these twisters a lot. And on top of that, you know, the destruction's there, the energy's there, a lot of it's there. And it's really entertaining. Is it the first one? No, it's really not. I still love the first one, but this one, again, good time. Good idea for a sequel. We saw this in Ultra AVX. We were originally going to see it in the, 40X, which is like, sort of like, I was seeing footage of it on YouTube, and it kind of reminded me of the ride at Universal Studios, which, Universal, you made a terrible mistake. I realize they're making a lot of, like, look backs of what they've done. They realize we made a lot of mistakes. Getting rid of Twister, the ride, was a bad one, and also getting rid of Beetlejuice and Earthquake was bad, because now you've got a ride that's completely closed that nobody gives a shit about, and another ride nobody gives a shit about because it stars a shitty TV talk host. But, to the point, it's like, yeah, you could have kept that ride, because the 40X was probably going to be the closest thing we get to the return to that. But other than that, again, this sequel's it's a pretty damn good time. Like, it's a decent movie. Go see it at a drive-in. Go see it in the big screen. It's worth watching. We watched it apparently Toronto's been having huge storms lately, so we had that to work with, which made it more intense, I guess, in a way. But overall, Twisters is a good sequel. It's not a great sequel. It's not like Aliens, which clearly the titling was meant to homage because, you know, Alien and Aliens, but this one's Twisters, which, funny enough, the next movie we saw after this, right after they had the trailer for Alien Romulus, I want to see that. It actually looks really good. But with Twisters, it's playing a nod to the Aliens title, but as a standalone sequel, a good time at the movies. This is kind of going back to a form of 90s summer entertainment. It's full of laughs, it's got some great action and adventure, great characters to root for, you're in it the whole ride, it feels like a ride, and it's a decent time. Again, it's not the first one. I still like the first one. And this one is a good, loving tribute to the first movie. So, not much in terms of connection to the first one, other than some callbacks and one that you wish was there. But overall, a good time. That's all I really got to say about Twisters, guys. It's a 7 out of 10. I mean, nothing special, but again, nothing wrong with it. I had a good time. Nikita had a good time. And it was overall a good day at the movies. So, go check out Twisters and let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Do you like it more than the first one? Do you like it less than the first one? Do you feel like there should have been more connections? Also, a little trivia. What would have been your callback to Twister? How would you have written Twisters? How would have you done it with the state of it now? Like, would you have brought Helen Hunt back? Would you have brought other characters back? And also, you know what? I'm feeling it. I don't know how well this is doing at the box office, but given movies aren't doing that well in general, let's get a Twister 3. Let's just round up the trilogy. And let me know what you would want to see in Twister 3. And I will say this, without much spoilers, last minute thing, the ending is a little ridiculous. A little bit more than the first one. But I feel like that's how they're scaling it. It's kind of becoming that kind of franchise, like the Meg and shit. But again, I don't care. But let me know what you want to see in not Alien 3, Twister 3, in the comments below, and let me know your thoughts on this one. Don't forget to support our Patreon. We're going to be back with more of these soon, and tune in next time when we take a look at the second double feature with Deadpool and Wolverine. We saw that as well, and I'll talk about that in the next video. So until then, guys, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys later. This is BigJackFilms signing off, and is that an F5? That's all I got. Oh, a finger of God. I'll see you guys later. Take it easy.